Hello everyone, and welcome to the Toothless Racing channel. If you're tuning in here, you're probably considering doing your first track weekend, which congratulations. You're taking a first step into a major addiction that is probably going to be one of the best decisions of your life. My name is Kyle. I'm an instructor with a track organization here in the Southeast. I also do racing with a number of organizations, and really I've decided to make this channel for people that want to get into track day riding, but they're really not sure how to do so, and even for people that are looking to take that next step in their track day riding and want to see what it takes to move up to those intermediate and advanced classes. Much like most of you that are probably watching this, I started out with zero knowledge of track days. It was right after I got out of college. I didn't even know anything about motorcycles in general. As far as I was concerned, a Harley and a Hayabusa were the exact same things. And through the years and getting to the track more and more frequently, the kind of addiction has grown stronger, and now it's something that I spend as much of my free time doing as I possibly can. Like I said, this video in particular is designed for people that are trying to get into their first track weekend and they just simply don't know where to start, or they feel a little overwhelmed. There are a lot of other videos out there that discuss what you need for your first track weekend, but I've found that a lot of them are kind of perpetuating some rather serious misconceptions about what a track day is. You don't need to have a fully prepped race bike or track bike. You don't need to have the thousands of dollars in riding equipment and gear and stuff for the pits that a lot of people are recommending. And a lot of those items are great to have and they're very, very nice, but for your very first track weekend, it just isn't necessary. That first weekend, you're going out there, you're going to be so overwhelmed with just the whole new experience of being on a track that a lot of those items that maybe you've purchased will go unused. Even things like putting in brand new fancy trick suspension, it's not going to get utilized in that first weekend because ultimately you've never been on a track. You don't understand yet the fundamentals of riding on a track. It's similar to going out and golfing for the first time, and you have to learn just the rules of the game. You've got to learn how to use those golf clubs that you just bought. And so this episode is going to basically cover those fundamentals and the bare bones necessities that you need. You're probably going to notice that there are some items missing on here that you might feel are needed. And we will cover that in another episode where we will, kind of go into those things that would be nice to have, things that will make being in the pits easier and riding easier. But again, they are not necessary to getting out there for the first weekend. So if you are someone that's on a super tight shoestring budget and financially probably shouldn't even be going to the track, but you've decided to say, screw it, I'm going anyways, or you're just one of those people that you just kind of want to dip your toe into the the shallow end of what it is to ride at a track day, this video is going to be perfect for you. We are going to cover what you need for the bike, what you need as far as riding gear goes, and what you need in the pits as well. So let's go ahead and start off with everything you need to bring for the pits. All right, so going down the line here, we'll start in the back. First things first, a roll of paper towels or shop towels. I think that kind of is self-explanatory. You're going to be doing a lot of just wiping the bike down, cleaning parts off, cleaning your tools, everything else. So we definitely want to have a set of paper towels. Cans of brake clean. You're going to go through this faster than I think most people realize. I prefer the Per Oil But most common ones out there, you're going to see CRC, whatever the auto parts version of it is. Also, I'm not sponsored by any of the brands that I might show or say, but if you would like to, I am not ashamed to beg and plead for it. So definitely shoot me a message if you are interested in that. But like I said, the brake clean, super important, along with chain lube. A lot of new riders are not used to lubing their chain very frequently. A lot of us think that it's something that we just kind of need to have done when we bring our bikes in for maintenance, or when we do our spring maintenance before the riding season starts. But you're in a lot more extreme conditions on the track. The bike is being put through a lot more aggressive riding than is normally done. So we want to make sure that that chain stays well lubricated throughout the entire weekend. And so that is something that you absolutely need to have. Moving on to tools, a set of sockets and a wrench. If your bike is European or Japanese, it's going to be metric. If you're riding some type of weird US made sport bike of some kind, whether that is an Indian or a Harley or maybe even something like a Buell, you may need standard, but whichever one you need, bring a set of comparable sockets, and of course the ratchet to go with that. Also, just bring a set of flathead and Phillips head screwdrivers. You never know when you might need them, even if it's to pry something. Always good to have those. We've got a set of wire cutters. You'd be shocked at how many zip ties are on even a bone stock factory motorcycle. They use tons of them, and at some point you will probably be cutting a zip tie off. And since most people have something with a sharp edge on their pliers, go ahead and dig them out, bring them with, okay? Last thing, as far as kind of your standard home hand tools that you should bring, a good old-fashioned adjustable hammer, or adjustable wrench, as the uninitiated may call it. It's always good to bring a couple of them. Very often they are not the tool that you should be using for whatever you're using them on, but they do always get used at some point. So, and again, most of this stuff you probably already have laying around the house. Throw them all together, throw them in a box, bring them with. Doesn't have to be fancy. The only thing that some people may consider a specialty tool is going to be a set of Allen keys, a full set that you actually have numbered and know which ones are which. I bought this set here at Harbor Freight. I want to say they are $4 or $5 for a set of metric Allen head keys. You can even buy a 2-pack with standard and metric for, I think it's a whopping $7 or $8. Some people do enjoy using T-handles instead. They are very nice to have. They cost a couple bucks more, again, at Harbor Freight. If you want to buy a nicer set, you can start going down the rabbit hole of how nice you want to get. There are some nicer Husky versions, and then you can go all the way up into your Snap-on and Matco. They all do the exact same job, and again, first track weekend, you're not doing a full engine rebuild in the pits. You don't need anything super fancy. Super important is going to be a roll of painter's tape. Most, if not all, novice sessions at pretty much every track organization in the US, if not the world, is going to require you to tape up your lights, your mirrors, anything that's reflective, sometimes even like license plate bolts, sometimes even taping over your license plate as a whole. So it's going to be super important that you bring a roll of that, especially if you bring your bike to tech and they tell you, hey, you have to bring it back, throw another layer of tape over it. So definitely make sure you've got that. We've also got zip ties here. I think a bag of these costs like $7 or $8. You can even buy a giant jug of them with varying sizes for $15 or $20. Go ahead and buy them. It holds stuff together very nicely. And again, that is something that you will almost guaranteed need for your first weekend. again, spend the money, just buy a bunch of them. You'll probably never need to buy another bag of them again. Moving on to, and this should probably be more associated with your riding gear, but it's super, super important that you've got foam earplugs. Some riders hate them and say that they never ride with them. It's probably because they've never actually ridden with them. When you're on track with 20 or 30 other people and you've got leader bikes whizzing by you with full race exhausts, mentally it can be incredibly exhausting and it's hard to focus when you've got all that sound. Throwing a set of earplugs in doesn't mean you're not going to be able to hear your leader bike or your 600 scream away at 16,000 RPM. You will absolutely hear every single second of it, but what these are going to do is it's going to kind of block out the background noise a little bit. It's going to allow you to focus more on what you're doing, and it's basically just going to take the edge off of being out on track. It's going to let you focus more, let you process things a little easier. Absolutely bring some earplugs with. You know, this whole box, I want to say it was $18 or $20. You don't need that many. You know, buy just a couple pairs or bring a couple pairs from home. It's going to absolutely alter your experience 100%. As far as, you know, needing to change pressures in your tires, I highly recommend starting out with just a bicycle pump of some kind. If you have an air compressor, that is fantastic. Fill it up, bring it to the track. You don't need a lot of air to fill your tires up. You don't need a lot of pressure. The bike pump is cheap. Most of us have one. If you don't, you can go to Walmart and pick one up, and it's all you really need. I bring an air compressor that I just fill up before I leave for the weekend, and it's still half full by the time I get home, and I change my pressures pretty much every other session that I'm out riding. Obviously, when you have any type of compressor or air pump and you're filling your tires up, you're going to need to check your pressures. So a pressure gauge is absolutely necessary as well. This one is a digital. I bought this one off of Amazon. I want to say it was about $30. If you've got even just one of those little tiny cheap pen pressure gauges that you can get for free sometimes, even at local tire shops, that's perfectly fine. You don't need to know your tire pressures down to the decimal point. Again, for your first weekend, you just want to make sure that you've got them, you know, within a reasonable range. And so, you know, either get a pressure gauge like this, which is super, super nice, or just bring whatever you've got from the house. It works totally fine. Last couple of things here. A track map, something like this, print one out. You can usually Google image a track map of your local track that you're going to. It just helps a lot when you come into the pits and you're trying to figure out, you know, what you did out there, maybe what you did wrong, what you did right, what that specific turn looks like. You can take notes on it, write down the names of the different corners that people are calling that specific turn. And it just kind of makes things easier than trying to remember what the track looks like after you come off. Last two things here, bring water. The more water, the better. I always keep a 24 pack in the trailer with me. Another thing that some people do, which I really like as well, is to bring gallon jugs, one gallon for every day that you're there. That should be the bare minimum what you're drinking. And then the gallon jug also allows you to kind of keep track of how much it is you have actually had to drink that day. You know, again, I think a 24 pack of water is, you know, $5–10 maybe. The gallon jugs are usually about $1.50 to $2 per jug. Great way to stay hydrated, to keep yourself from, you know, just getting exhausted prematurely. Helps you focus a little bit more, so very, very important. And then lastly is you're going to want a fuel jug of some kind. So this one here is the one that I use for racing. You don't need anything this fancy. If you've got just a standard like garage fuel jug that holds 3 or 4 gallons, bring that with, that's totally fine. It just helps out if you start running low on fuel for the day. You've got it right there. Throw a splash in and you're good to go. So with that being said, we are going to move on to the bike. All right, So first things first, you can see here, this is not a track bike by any means. This is actually my dad's street bike. It's a Ducati Monster. I believe it's a 2016. You're going to see a lot of different types of bikes at the track. You don't need a dedicated track bike. This is obviously by no means a super sport or a super bike. It is really meant for kind of twisty turny roads in the mountains, or even daily commuting. I know some people do that with these, but the preconceived notion that you need to have a dedicated sport bike with track fairings and all that kind of stuff, throw it out the window. It's not needed. Whatever motorcycle you have, bring it to the track. As far as preparing your bike, most track day organizations, again, if not all of them, make it incredibly easy to get on the track with your street bike. The most important thing is you're going to tape up any lights, so your headlight, your turn signals, reflectors down here. You want to make sure that all of those are taped over. Most of that is because if you should have a crash or anything like that, we don't want those pieces shattering. We also don't want people seeing reflections or bright lights or anything like that on the track. So make sure you cover those up, turn your lights on. If you can see the light, then you need to throw an extra layer on there. As you're looking over your bike, just check your brake lever, make sure it feels good. If it feels a little squishy, either have it bled by a mechanic or bleed it yourself if you're able to do that or you're confident in that. The other part of the brake system that we really want to look over is the brake pads themselves. Just shine a light in there. Make sure that you can see brake pad against the rotor. If it's been a really long time since you've changed pads, or maybe you've never changed them and your bike is 10 or 15 years old, you should probably consider swapping those out. A set of OEM pads typically are not that expensive, and anything involving the tires or the braking system, we want to make sure that is 100% good to go. Otherwise, that's what you need to stop. And if you're not confident in the bike's ability to stop or to grip on the road, you're going to have a bad time. So we want to make sure that we've got a good set of pads on there. You don't need anything crazy. A set of OEM pads is perfectly fine. If you do want to upgrade, there are some great track day pads out there that they give you a little more stopping power, but they're not full race pads that you need to warm up beforehand and that take 2 or 3 laps to really warm up and get hot. So there are options out there for you on that, but for the purposes of your first weekend, make sure your pads are good and that we're able to trust those. The other thing, you want to just inspect your forks, make sure that they look good, they're nice and clean, there's no leaks. If you do have a leak, that is something that you do absolutely want to get fixed before the weekend starts. Nothing worse than leaking fork fluid onto the track and then you wash out because of that, and that also is a potential problem for other people as well. So with that being said, let's go around to the back and we'll discuss a little bit on the chains and a little more on the tires. So same as on the front, we want to make sure that our brake light, our turn signals, kind of any bolts that are maybe holding the license plate on are taped up. Honestly, I would just recommend removing your license plate altogether. Just kind of makes things easier, and it's one less thing to fall off. When it comes to the chain, we want to make sure that the chain is the proper amount of tension in it. It's not too tight, not too loose. If you're not entirely sure how a chain should look or how tight it should be, that's a perfect thing to ask the guys in the tech area once you get to the track. If it's not something you're comfortable doing yourself, you can always ask an instructor or someone in the pits to help you out and show you what you need to do for that. The number one thing though that you definitely can do and that you should do is to clean your chain and lube it before you get to the track or as soon as you get to the track. You do not want to have a chain that is dry or that is dirty. Doing that is literally as easy as putting some chain lube onto a rag, running it along the chain, move the bike forward a little bit, run it along the chain again, move it forward a little bit, run it along the chain until you've done the whole thing. And just making sure there's a nice, not a heavy coat, but it's similar to like when you water the garden. You want it to look damp or wet, but you don't want to see any chain loop pooling up anywhere, because that's going to get slung off once you get on the track. And again, it could be something that it maybe gets on the tire and makes the bike kind of get a little squirrely on you until it gets worn off. Last thing is we want to make sure that our tires are in good condition. You don't need any type of specific track day tire. All that matters is that you got a tire that is not dry rot, that is not cracked, that has a good amount of tread life left. If you do have any questions on it, always ask the tire guy that is probably going to be at your track day. But a good rule of thumb when it comes to your tires is, if you have to ask yourself or even have to think about, are those tires good enough to ride on? The answer is no. Always have confidence in your tires. Don't ever even have to second guess your tires, because if you do, it's going to mess with your mind when you're on track, and potentially the tires could actually be bad, and you won't know until you find out, which may end up being in a gravel trap. So always make sure your tires are in good shape. If not, replace them. Most track organizations have a tire guy there that will go through them. They'll take a look. They can recommend different tires for you, different pressures to run them at, because we are not by any means running the same pressures in our tires at the track that we would be on the street. If you do that, your bike is going to feel like it's on ice skates. So again, if you have any questions, always talk to the tire guys or to one of the instructors that are going to be there, and they will square you away. That is really the last thing that you need to do to prepare your bike. Really, it's just taping up those headlights and reflectors, check your chain, check your brakes, check your tires. As long as those things are good, you're good to go. Last thing that we need to discuss is the riding gear. So let's go ahead and get on to that. All right, so going right down the line, first off, we have got our race boots. Most organizations are going to require a boot that goes at least over the ankle. I highly recommend something that is considered a race boot, which is going to be basically coming up mid-calf. They provide better ankle support. Your suit can go inside, so it guarantees that no skin's going to be showing. If you do go down, you're not going to get any road rash on your ankles, your feet, your legs, anything like that. They also do not use shoestrings on here. Again, it's just one less thing that can get caught in a chain or anything like that. So these just zip up and they snap in on the side. They do also have toe guards here. Again, there's better support on the ankles themselves. You can usually start to find these at around $100, $150. Check out Cycle Gear for most of this stuff. It's a great place to try things on, see what fits, what doesn't, what's comfortable. But again, you don't need to buy a $600 or $700 set of boots. Buy a pair that's comfortable, that is going to provide good protection, but you don't need to spend an arm and a leg on any of this gear, really. Same goes with the gauntlet style gloves. Basically, these are going to cover your wrists. Your suit will slide into the wrists themselves, again, making sure that there's no skin showing if you do crash. These here have knuckle guards on them, palm guards on this side. Definitely, highly recommend a good set of riding gloves. They usually start around $60 to $70, and you can go up to spending $300, $400 on them if you want. But if you're just trying to get a set to get you through the weekend, don't worry about it. Buy a set that's comfortable. Buy a set that is well made. There's a few different options out there. I've always ridden with Sedici only because they fit me really well. I've tried $200, $300 sets of gloves and they just don't fit me quite the same. So I'm a big fan of those. And again, you can find all of these options at Cycle Gear. Next option is going to be a back protector. This is something that most novice groups are not going to require, but I would say that it is something that is required only because if you do go down and something weird happens and you hyperextend your back, that could be a bad time. These are designed to help prevent that hyperextension and to absorb some of that. You just wear it under your suit just like a backpack essentially, and it's just an extra level of protection for you that I think is, for the $90 or $100 that they cost, is, you know, invaluable really. The next thing here is going to be a helmet. Now, if there's any area in your track weekend that you're going to spend money, it needs to be on your helmet. Do not show up with one of those helmets that cost $150 and have some crazy, you know, print work on the outside of them, that with the really cool, you know, front mask on it, and think that that's going to suffice, because it's not. Your helmet that you ride in, you should be able to tell people that you trust your life to it. And if you've got friends that are telling you that, you know, your $100, $150 helmet that, you know, you bought brand new and it cost $100, if they're telling you that that is okay to ride in, you need to get some new friends, because they are going to kill you. The fact is, the nicer the helmet, the more expensive the helmet, the safer you're going to be. You know, usually I found the sweet spot is going to be about $400 to $600 on a helmet. You know, that's where you're getting a lot of the more advanced protection systems out there. The airflow is better, they're going to be lighter, and, you know, most importantly, they are just going to protect your head better. Some of the brands that I usually recommend are going to be like Shoei, RI, HJC, Scorpion is another one that I know some people really like. But definitely look at reviews, try helmets on, because not all helmets are the same. Some brands make helmets that for people with heads that are slightly more round, some that are more oval shaped, some that are a little bit narrower on the sides. So even if, you know, you love the idea of having a Shoei helmet, you may put one on and realize that it hurts to wear. So, you know, definitely go in, spend the money, you know, set a budget that you can afford, and then look at helmets that are probably $100 or $200 more than that. And if you got to put it on a credit card to make it work, this is the one thing that I will tell you: spend as much money as you possibly can on your helmet. You know, if you're getting up over $1,000 on a helmet, you're probably at that point starting to buy a helmet that's just not unnecessary. But that $400 to $600 range is a great place to start. The last piece of equipment, and probably the most seen, is going to be your race suit. You know, this one's pretty short, sweet, and to the point. Get a single piece race suit. If you have a two piece and your organization allows you to ride with it, absolutely, you know, use that. You know, it'll save you a ton of money for that weekend. But if you don't have a race suit and you're looking at one, go ahead, get a single piece. You know, if you have a two piece but you're not quite sure about it and it's a little older and dingy, swap to a single piece. It just provides a little more protection. You don't have the zipper down the middle that it's a potential spot for the suit to break. The other big thing is you don't need to spend $1,500 on a race suit. You know, a lot of people think you need to buy the high-end Alpine Stars or Revit or Sedici or Dainese suits, and you know, those suits are fantastic, and if you can afford it and it's in your budget, absolutely go for it. At the end of the day, it's a piece of safety equipment, and we don't ever want to cheap out just because we're trying to be miserly and not spend the money. But with that being said, with it being your first weekend and, you know, you're on a tighter budget, I highly recommend the Sedici Corsa and the Sedici Chicane, I believe they're called, race suits. You can check them out at Cycle Gear, and again, I am not sponsored by Cycle Gear. That's just where I've always recommended going for this type of stuff, because they're one of the few people that have it. But anyways, usually these suits are around $400 to $500. Around Black Friday, I believe Cycle Gear typically does a sale on them. You can get them as little as like $300 or $350 out the door for a brand new suit. It's perfect. I've worn this one here for the better part of 4 years. I've gone down in it, I've crashed in it multiple times, I've raced in it, I instruct in it. It's been absolutely fabulous, and it cost me $350. Now, if you can afford a nicer suit, again, absolutely go for it. They will fit you better. They will breathe a little bit better. The padding and the plating in them is going to be nicer. But for your first time out on track and you're just, you're trying to get out there and maybe you are on a tighter budget, these are fantastic suits to start with. I wouldn't even consider anything else for a first time rider. So that is pretty much it as far as our riding gear goes. The moral of the story is it doesn't have to be expensive, but the more you can spend on your safety equipment, the better it's going to be. All right, guys, that pretty much wraps it up. I know that may have been a lot of information, but at the end of the day, that the list is actually very short. I will make sure to post a list of everything that I recommended at the end of this video. But really remember, the name of the game is to enjoy the riding while you're at the track. It's not about making sure you've got the prettiest bike there, making sure that you have the fanciest helmet, or anything else. It's really about enjoying your ride, being safe, learning something new, and having fun at the end of the day. So I hope that this helps some of you out there that maybe feel a little overwhelmed by some of the information that's out there on what you need. Really just remember, you're there to ride. If you're worried about too much else, you need to simplify it. And at the end of the day, if you have questions or you need something or you need a part or anything, the motorcycle community is fantastic at the track. People really go out of their way to make sure that you're having a good time and that you're comfortable and safe. So always ask questions, always reach out for help, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.